is it something that's frustrated me forever. It's like, I know cell phones don't have to break, right? They don't have to break. Why do we have to keep replacing our cell phones? But anyway, so I like this topic. This is what he says. He says, I would like to thank the Lord Jesus, my Savior, my family, friends who helped me with my exordium, Mr. Christian for being my thesis advisor, and Mr. Wade Strickland for something, maybe for, I don't know, for no apparent reason. And his title is Built to Break, Why Planned Obsolescence Should Be Restricted by Law. Give me a couple of seconds to set up the timer, and I'll tell you when you can start. You can start when ready.
Picture a quiet Sunday afternoon. The sun glazing through the windows and your favorite uncle laughing at a joke until he isn't. A sudden trip, a big thud, and he's on the ground, unconscious. Your heart starts beating like the speed of sound. You don't know medicine, but you do know that your phone is your lifeline. So what did you do? You grab that $1,000 piece of technology of yours and you slide down through the emergency slider. But the screen stays absolutely black. You tried again harder and harder, but a white Apple logo appears before eventually freezing into a graveyard of pixels. You just realized that the software performance update you installed just last night wasn't meant to help you, but to destroy your phone. As you watch your uncle's chest barely even move, your lifeline has become nothing than just an unjust and overpriced glass brick in your hands. This isn't just a technical glitch or bad luck. It's an engineering assassination done to a perfectly functional device. What you just witnessed with your own eyes has a name: planned obsolescence. It's a business strategy of shortening product lifespans, which is far more than just corporate greed. It's an exploitation that prioritizes earnings over human life and therefore should be restricted by law. This is not entirely a new idea. It began in the early 20th century when major light bulb manufacturers like General Electric and Philips secretly agreed to limit the lifespan of light bulbs to only 1,000 hours. This became one of the first large-scale examples of companies reducing product durability for pure profit. During the Great Depression, economist Bernard London even proposed making product expiration a legal requirement to stimulate the economy and to increase the spending. Over time, planned obsolescence spread into American consumer culture, particularly in cars and household appliances. Manufacturers began convincing consumers that usable products were outdated simply to encourage replacement. As technology advances, this system evolves with it too. Today, smartphones, laptops, and tablets have become some of the clearest examples. Modern companies shorten product lifespans through software slowdowns, flimsy construction, and sealed batteries that are difficult or expensive to replace. As a result, according to Statista, the average lifespan of a smartphone in 2023 itself is only 2.53 years, and that number is still slowly shrinking. There are several types of planned obsolescence. First, technological obsolescence occurs when software updates or new systems implemented on or integrated towards an older device makes it harder to use, even though it still can operate. Second, psychological obsolescence occurs when advertising or social pressure convinces consumers that their perfectly working devices are already outdated. These practices affect both everyday users and the environment. People are forced into constant upgrade cycles that creates financial pressure, while discarded electronics generates enormous amounts of e-waste. The continuous production of new devices also drains natural resources and increases pollution. This issue has become even more serious because smartphones are no longer luxuries. They're essential tools for communication, education, work, and everyday life. Today, the debate over this continues. Large technological corporations argue that constant upgrades encourages innovation and economic growth. However, advocates argue that planned obsolescence harms consumers, damages the environment, and encourages unethical corporate practices. For these reasons, planned obsolescence in smartphones should be restricted by law. First, although smartphone companies claim devices naturally slow down over time, many cases show that planned obsolescence intentionally harms users by shortening product lifespans and forcing constant replacements. One of the clearest examples was Apple's Batterygate controversy. This tech giant admitted to slowing down older iPhone models through software updates, claiming it was done to protect its battery health. However, many consumers were never informed about these changes and believed that their phones were simply becoming unusable. Samsung faced almost identical accusations. Italy's Authority for Market and Competition found that software updates pushed onto Galaxy Note 4 devices caused serious performance problems, fining Samsung 5 million euros. Two of the biggest smartphone rivals caught doing the exact same thing. As a result, lawsuits were filed by customers who felt manipulated into buying new devices, even though their phones still work well. Instead of improving devices, it actually accelerates obsolescence and increases consumer spending. The problem also extends beyond software. Many smartphones are intentionally designed to be difficult to repair. Devices often contain glued batteries, sealed components, and fragile glass backs that require specialized tools and expensive repairs. Although many people would prefer repairing their phones, high repair costs and limited access to parts often make buying new the easier option. Repairs become so expensive that buying a completely new phone appears more reasonable than fixing a small issue. Limited spare parts, restricted repair services, and inflated repair pricing places financial pressure on both households, especially lower income groups who rely heavily on smartphones for their daily life. Even governments have had enough. The European Union's new eco-design regulation, which started applying on 20 June 2025, set a mandatory minimum for smartphones sold across Europe. Manufacturers are now required to supply critical spare parts within 5 to 10 working days for at least 7 years after a product model is discontinued. They also provide software support for at least 5 years after the unit is sold, and display a repairability score on products labels so that consumers can make better long-term choices. The fact that international governments are creating laws against this practices shows that planned obsolescence is not just a business strategy, it's a serious form of exploitation. Second, planned obsolescence does not only exploit users financially, it also causes serious environmental destruction. Every year, millions of smartphones are discarded long before they completely stop functioning. Devices that could have lasted far longer are replaced simply because of weakened batteries, software slowdowns, and expensive repairs. As a result, smartphones have become a major contributor to the global e-waste crisis. According to UN's Global E-Waste Monitor 2024, 62 million tons of electronic waste was generated in 2022 alone, enough to fill 1.55 million trucks lined up bumper to bumper across the whole entire equator. Yet only 22.3% was properly recycled. Most cast-off devices end up in landfills or shipped to developing countries, where toxic materials contaminate the natural world. These phones release harmful substances such as lead, mercury, and cobalt into soil, water, and air. Improper disposal and burning also releases greenhouse gases that contribute to climate change. The environmental damage does not stop there. Manufacturing smartphones requires enormous amounts of energy and rare natural resources, such as lithium, cobalt, nickel, and gold. Mining these materials destroys ecosystems, pollutes rivers, and also produces massive carbon emissions. The World Economic Forum shows that over 90% of a smartphone's lifetime carbon emissions come from not using it, but from manufacturing it itself, meaning every premature replacement multiplies that damage. Greenpeace reports that since 2007, producing smartphones has consumed over 968 terawatt hours, which is enough to fuel the whole entire India in 1 year. The global e-waste monitor also shows that only 1% of rare earth minerals used in electronics are recovered through recycling, forcing companies to constantly return to destructive new mining operations. When tech corporations force people into constant replacement cycles, they dramatically increase planetary damage by demanding continuous production of new devices. Planned obsolescence also creates serious human health risks. In many poor regions, e-waste is processed through unsafe, informal recycling. Workers, including children, are exposed to toxic smoke and dangerous chemicals while burning electronic waste to recover valuable metals. Health organizations warn that exposure to these substances can damage the lungs, the brain, and the nervous system, especially in children and pregnant women. The human toll of this is absolutely staggering. These informal recycling sites, where 16.5 million children spend hours burning circuit boards just to recover tiny flecks of metal, exposes them to levels of mercury that can cross the placenta and can cause permanent damage on the lungs, the brain, and nervous system that are still developing. This suffering is not a side effect. It is a consequence of a business decision. Third, planned obsolescence is not only harmful, it is unethical. Consumers deserve fair value for the money they spend, but with planned obsolescence, they never get it. Think of it this way. Imagine buying a carton of milk, but the factory secretly shortened the expiry date. Not because the milk goes bad faster, but because they want you in the back store sooner. That is exactly what this exploitation does. Instead of paying once for a durable product, consumers pay again and again for what essentially is engineered trash. Inside every smartphone is an invisible ticking clock, slowly counting down to failure. And the company that sold it to you put it there on purpose. When people buy expensive smartphones, they expect those devices to last years, not slowly deteriorate because companies intentionally designed them that way. Instead, many tech giants rely on repeated upgrades to increase profits. People are trapped again and again into spending far more time on products that could have lasted much longer. In the United States alone, Americans spend $166 billion every year on mobile phone services, a financial burden made worse when devices are engineered to fail before they should. What makes this worse is the lack of transparency. These corporations often know exactly how long their products will remain fully supported or effective, while buyers do not. Businesses understand software timelines, repair limitations, and hardware weaknesses, yet purchasers make decisions without access to this information. This creates a major imbalance of power between corporations and everyday people, leaving them with fewer choices. In many cases, purchasing a new device becomes easier than repairing it. As a result, consumers face higher long-term costs, especially lower-income groups who heavily depend on smartphones. These practices also violate basic principles of consumer protection laws. Laws in regions such as the European Union require companies to provide truthful and transparent information about their products. Even Indonesia's own consumer protection law, Law number 8 of 1999, Article 4, gives consumers the right to truthful information, while Article 7 mandates businesses to provide accurate product details. It strictly prohibits flawed goods without disclosing their condition. And yet, that is what exactly these companies do: sell a flawed product without a single word of warning. Finally, planned obsolescence fails the idea of corporate responsibility itself. Companies are expected not only to make profits, but also to minimize harm toward consumers, society, and the environment. Corporate social responsibility, or the CSR, states that firms achieve economic success while also protecting the people affected by their actions and reducing them. But planned obsolescence goes in the complete opposite direction. These firms defend it by calling it innovation when the actual goal is simply to increase profits rather than improve technology. They also fail their environmental responsibility. Shortened product lifespans means more e-waste, more resource extraction, and more pollution. A responsible business focuses on long-term value creation by developing innovations that genuinely improve people's life instead of trapping consumers in endless cycles of replacement. Supporters of planned obsolescence often argue that it encourages innovation and economic growth. They claim that frequent replacement cycles creates demand, push companies to develop new technologies, and prevent the market from being stagnant. However, economic efficiency does not justify unethical practices. In reality, many companies do not shorten product lifespans to create meaningful innovation. They do it to maximize profit. The proof is right in front of us. In 2017, Apple was caught secretly slowing down older iPhone models through software updates without telling a single user. Samsung did the exact same thing and was fined 5 million euros by Italian authorities for pushing updates that crippled the older Galaxy devices. Two competitors, one identical scheme. This is not innovation. This is an industry playing the same dirty game. Fairphone proves this point perfectly. It scored a 10 out of 10 on repairability, and yet it remains profitable and an innovative company, without secretly breaking your phones to survive. If Fairphone can do it, there's no excuse for Apple or Samsung not to. Others argue that consumers willingly choose to upgrade their smartphones, meaning replacements are based on personal preference rather than corporate manipulation. But this ignores the fact how companies actively shape consumer behavior. When phones become slower, incompatible with newer apps, or difficult to repair, consumers are pressured into replacing them. Marketing strategies and psychological pressure also encourage people to feel dissatisfied with devices that still perfectly work well. What appears to be free choice is often influenced by intentional degradation and corporate design decisions. Think about it. When your phone gets slower every update, when your favorite apps stop working, and where repair bill costs more than the new device itself, are you really choosing to upgrade? Or are you being pushed? That is not consumer freedom. That is a trap with a price tag. Finally, some claim that restricting planned obsolescence would increase smartphone prices because longer-lasting products cost more to produce. While durable devices may sometimes have higher upfront costs, constant replacement cycles are far more expensive in the long run. Consumers repeatedly spend money replacing devices that could have lasted much longer. Policies such as the right to repair laws and modular phone designs prove that technology can remain durable, repairable, and accessible without sacrificing innovation. The math is simple. Paying slightly more upfront for a phone that lasts 5 years will always cost less than replacing a cheaper phone every 2. Durability is the smarter, fairer deal. Restricting planned obsolescence is not about stopping progress. It is about ensuring that technological advancement happens fairly, ethically, and responsibly. Throughout this thesis, we have seen how companies use software slowdowns, restrictive repair services, and fragile designs that push consumers towards constant replacement. We also saw the environmental destruction, leaving behind millions and mountains of e-waste and children breathing toxic fumes in unsafe recycling sites. We also saw how planned obsolescence violates consumer trust by hiding critical information and prioritizing profit over responsibility. But picture the same exact quiet Sunday afternoon. Except this time, your phone did not freeze. It works because someone decided it should. Now imagine, the tool in your pocket is actually considered a reliable companion of yours, not a liability designed to eventually betray you. When we look at discarded smartphones, we shouldn't just see broken glass and metal, but we should see what actually happens when profit matters than people. It is very wrong for children to breathe toxic smoke, reclaiming metals from devices that could have lasted much longer. So, we cannot stay in silence. We must pressure the governments to enforce laws against this. Choose durable technology, hold corporations accountable. Transition from being passive consumers in a throwaway culture to active citizens in a circular economy. A device designed to fail is not a sign of progress. It is a breach of trust. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good job, Dexter. Our panelists are Miss Joe and Mr. Joe Wall. Let's start with Miss Joe.
Hi, Dexter.
Hi, Miss.
Test. Oh, okay. Thank you for the presentation. I think it was a very well spoken. You've got the pathos there. It was very, yeah. I see you conquered your speech very well. So good job on that. I think, yeah, this is a very interesting topic, and also a very interesting thesis that I don't think that is brought very often. I think at least public should know, and I'm glad that you do this. So. First question. Where is the line between, okay, because you mentioned about planned obsolescence, and that's the intention behind companies, etc., right? Now, where is the line between an actual planned obsolescence and a genuine hardware breakdown? Like, how can you tell whether it's an actual planned obsolescence and whether if it's not?
Okay, thank you for the question, Miss Josephine Kao. So how would I like to answer that question? We can see from the Apple's battery controversy, right? Before, basically, the phone starts to shut down by itself, and that's when a lot of people start thinking about it and why Apple do this. But by how they actually conquered this, they actually implemented a software update towards the device that makes it even slower, but makes it, less battery degradation. Therefore, that's planned obsolescence. But if you just draw the line between not the planned obsolescence, you can see when it's actually just degrading by itself. So like without any intervention by the companies.
So then are you limiting, if it's planned obsolescence, then there is a certain, so is it just software updates and things like that? Can you specify what kinds of things that happens to my phone that can be considered as planned obsolescence?
Okay. Basically, what I can, to the iPhone only or Samsung devices?
Both.
Both. So in the Samsung device, they have sealed batteries that are difficult or expensive to repair, right? Therefore, it actually makes the consumers think about it again and again and say, like, why is this phone getting worse over time? Let's just fix it. But you can't fix it because it's very expensive and it's like way too money wasting. So the solution, they buy a new phone. And for iPhones, it's the same battery gate controversy like before. It actually uses software updates to make it slower down, so everything is slowed down. But the complaining of the batteries just deliberately just going down from 30% is actually gone because, yeah, it's slowed as a whole entire device.
Sorry, can you repeat the last part?
Oh, the iPhone part? Okay. Basically, this iPhone, what I have in my hands, for example. Okay. How I would like to answer that, basically, this iPhone starts to basically go down from 30% to 0, right? But the companies don't want them to complain too much, so they implemented a software update towards the device, the iPhone specifically, that makes it even slower, but the batteries do not go directly to 0. But even though it becomes slower, it makes it worse because opening apps becomes, again, much slower, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So then okay, you mentioned in part of your solution is that companies, we need a law or regulation for transparency, for honesty. Is transparency really the solution for planned obsolescence? So if the company produces a smartphone that they say lasts for 3 years, would that then solve everything? By being transparent,
Okay.
they say that it lasts for, let's say, however many years they say. Would that then solve this problem?
Okay, so how I would answer the question is basically if there's transparency, like only 3 years, right? 3 years of phone that's gonna degrade their phone from there, right? Um, I think in the span of those 3 years, these companies will eventually like tweak some parts of the whole entire phone. So like it's not gonna be completely transparent. They need to provide more transparency than only stating it's gonna last for 3 years.
Okay, so then what is your definition of transparency? How transparent do they have to be? How honest?
Transparency. So basically, the 3 years here you're talking about is, I can say, only a grain of rice compared to paddy field. So how I can explain that is basically this small part, there's the other big part that is actually not stated. For example, the how many software updates they're going to implement towards the new device, and what actually the bug fixes that's eventually going to improve that device or not. Sometimes in the back of it, they really want to, let's say, degrade that device, and they don't explicitly state that. So that's the way.
Okay, and I don't know if you've considered this, but I think you've also mentioned this in your thesis, though, that people buy smartphones not only because their phones are broken, but sometimes it's because of social pressure. So, can you re-explain how that would be another thing to be addressed?
Social pressure.
Yeah, because people do change phones maybe once a year, twice a year, or once every 2 years, let's say, and that's not because their phones are broken.
Oh. Are you considering advertising here as an option? Okay. So basically, okay. So there's going to be the one that you're stating is psychological obsolescence, right? Okay. So how I would answer that question, if there's an advertisement in the middle of nowhere and it actually encourages people like to change phones, it's going to be part of obsolescence because it influences them to change to a newer device because that new, let's say the new phones are much better, and they see their old phone. Oh, why is this slowing down? Why is this degrading in a sense? Yeah, that's how I would answer that question.
Okay, so that's all part of the planned obsolescence by the companies then. Okay. Okay, now you've been on the part where you're against all these companies, right? Against Apple, against Samsung. Are those the only two companies mainly in this picture?
There's actually a lot of companies, but the two examples I put in this speech and my thesis is Apple and Samsung. But I can take some examples from Nintendo or the Microsoft. Do you want me to explain that?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if you were to put yourselves in the shoes of Apple or Samsung, those companies, and because you were saying that planned obsolescence should be restricted by law, right? And you've mentioned all of the laws from EU, from Indonesia, etc. Now, if you were to be in their shoes, how far or what things do you think should not be restricted by law if you were in the part of the company?
Can you give me some time to think? Would you mind repeating the question? I'm sorry.
So, in this thesis, right, you're trying to argue against planned obsolescence. Now, if you were to be in the shoes of the people in Apple, or let's say in Samsung, and okay, now there's this regulation by some country to restrict planned obsolescence. For you to fight for your company, then what parts of this will you fight for? Like, what would you want to still be there and not be restricted by law?
Okay. First of all, I would know that me in Apple is already wrong because they're doing planned obsolescence. It's wrong. It's a corporate manipulation. Why are they doing that? By doing that, they actually degrade their consumers over time. So, as a business, they actually should prioritize their consumers. So, by finding a solution for that, providing a whole transparency is actually the right option. That's my answer. Thank you.
Okay, we need to move on to Mr. Joel.
Hi, Dexter. Thank you for a great topic. I chose your topic because I naturally kind of agree with you, but I want to push back on you at the same time. Okay, so what phone do you have in your pocket?
My phone. I currently don't have phone in my pocket,
Okay.
but
Okay. What is your personal phone? What do you
My
what
personal
brand?
my personal phone is an iPhone 16 Pro.
An iPhone 16 Pro. Okay, so when did you purchase that phone?
I purchased that like 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yes.
Okay, so when are you planning to upgrade your phone next?
Planning to upgrade my phone.
Yeah.
Well, I see a lot of flaws in my object already, so like I think in the next 1 or 2 years.
Okay, so who has told you those are flaws, or that your phone, I mean, that's already a really top of the line phone. Why are there flaws already? Who is feeding you the message that there's flaws?
Who's feeding me the message?
Who's told you that that's not adequate enough for you?
My whole entire thesis. So basically, my whole entire thesis goes against that, right? So with all the reasons I have here, I can convince myself that it's all flawed, in a sense.
Okay. What I'm looking at also is there's the role of influencers and this whole marketing thing. We have the producers, the companies that are producing this, but you also have these other actors that are saying, "Oh, this is not good. You need to upgrade to this and this." So the messaging and the whole consumerism is also at play. The culture of buying more, to upgrade. What was your last phone before the iPhone 16?
My last phone.
How long did you have it?
Okay, I had the iPhone 13 for 3 years max.
Okay, 3 years. So you yourself are already kind of in this pattern of consumer. About every 3 years, you're upgrading. So my question, or what I would say, is you've spent about 9 months, give or take, working on this thesis, researching it, developing a personal conviction about it. How is that going to alter your behavior, your personal behavior?
My personal
Because
behavior.
you already have an iPhone 16, and you're planning to upgrade it already, even after all the research, all of your everything that you've presented to us today. Do you live up to your own standards?
Can you please define living up to your own standards?
Do you embody that? Is your ethos matching your thesis?
My ethos?
Why don't you have a fair phone?
Oh. Thank you for that question. So, when I first go down through these theses, I had the iPhone 16 Pro already.
Mm-hmm.
So, I would like to wait. Possibly Fairphone could be a better choice in the near future, but I think I might get a Fairphone. Probably in 2 years.
Okay, so it might be a good option for you in the future. You would consider it more.
Yes.
Okay, well that's good. You talked about ethics a lot. You're saying this is unethical. Planned obsolescence is unethical. I didn't hear much biblical worldview. So I'm going to ask you to give me a place in the Bible or something out of your faith where you would actually say, actually, we need to be ethical in our consumption.
Can I use a biblical perspective, but in another way?
Yeah.
Okay. So we can see that in the 10 Commandments, we should love our sisters and brothers, right? And our neighbors. So in here, with all this corporate manipulation towards people which are considered our brothers and sisters and our neighbors, well, that's completely going against the Ten Commandments. So that's how would I answer the question.
Okay. Okay. I can roll with that. Now, part of your thesis, restricted by law. I'm going to kind of hone in on the law and your policy. You're waiting on the government to implement a system of regulatory, a lifespan kind of system so we can make better choices. Now, you also made the comment, you said this active citizens take responsibility. And I would say, if you're an active citizen, you're not going to wait on the government to create and implement a system. If you're an active citizen, you're going to make ethical decisions with or without the government, with or without that. So I would say, why do we need the law? Why can't you just become an ethical consumer and live out your ethics with your purchasing behavior? Why do you need the government?
Basically, this government and the whole entire thing, it's towards the corporations, not the consumers. So I think it's not really relevant.
Okay. Let me ask it on a different end. So we've focused on the consumer end. Let's focus on the companies have an obligation to the investors, to the shareholders, to the stockholders. Do you own any tech stocks? Are you invested in Samsung or Apple or anything like that?
I'm not investing in any US stocks because I believe those stocks are going to eventually flung down. But probably I would consider Chinese corporations because they're going to be higher in the near future.
Okay. Will Chinese corporations, will they prioritize the investors, the shareholders, or will they prioritize the consumers?
Exactly. This is why I'm talking on planned obsolescence. They don't know what they're doing. They're just doing everything for profit, right? They don't really care about the human life, but like in terms of economy, China is on a high stake, so I can say they're better than the USA's.
Okay, that's the connection between why do we need a law to regulate is because corporations will always push for profits. Their obligation is valuing the investors, the shareholders. So you need the regulations to actually focus on the human side, the consumer. That's a good connection there. And my last question is: it seems like you're kind of you're heavily leaned against the tech sector. What other sectors is this actually applicable to, and do they warrant the same kind of regulation?
Okay, so we can use the example of speakers probably, because speakers, they have small parts of these technologies, right? Oh, it's technology. Let's do...
Your suit or your shoes, textiles.
Okay, exactly. Okay, let's say my shoes. I have New Balance 2002 Rs at home, right? They actually are sort of broken because on the sides, it's always like rubbed towards, so like, and it eventually gets broken down. And I think that's like part of planned obsolescence because they are actually supposed to design the shoes with better I don't know the exact word. I think it's okay, better. Yes. Better quality. Yes, I'm sorry.
It's good. I appreciate it. I appreciate you bringing this to mind, and I hope in 2 years that you are carrying a Fairphone, and maybe you can become a distributor here, and I'll buy a Fairphone from you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, maybe just a minute or two left. So it's true that I was going to talk a little bit about what Joel just was mentioning, is that your thesis seems to be focused on phones. Your title is just about planned obsolescence in general. Don't you think that this is in every product design, there is a discussion about what quality should we make this? How long should we expect this to last? When in America, we all mow our yards, right? We all have yards, we mow our yards, we go buy lawn mowers and yard equipment. And if you buy it at the big box like Home Depot, you often get something that's got plastic parts in it, and they don't last very long. And you can spend just a little bit more money and go get a professional grade lawnmower, because they do the same thing with lawnmowers. How do we build this restriction in to all product design, or what do we need to do? Just transparency? Is that it, or what? In other words, don't you well, let me start it this way.
Yeah.
Don't you think that this is a common part of every product design, whether it's phones, lawnmowers, tennis shoes, or anything? People think, or light bulbs, as you point out in your thesis. Isn't this something that every product designer has to think about? How long do I want this product to last? And that has to be in line with what the company wants as well in order to make profit. So isn't that true? Isn't it part of everything, not just phones?
Planned obsolescence is indeed part of everything. But in my thesis specifically, I'm talking about smartphones. So like, I didn't really dive into other products like chairs, shoes, or probably cameras because, yeah, my main part of the thesis is smartphones.
So should we have laws, restrictions by law for all product design, or you just want to focus on cell phones?
Oh, I agree with you. We need all laws against planned obsolescence because everything in their brain, in the company's brain, all they want is profit, right? They don't care about human life and everything. So I think with transparency, with ethical practices, they're able to conquer this, you know.
Okay, time is up. Good job, Dexter. Okay, we will meet over here, friends, family.